Today I'm speaking with Rumaan Mekki, and she's the Assistant Director of Research and Development here at Saida Trust, and we will be discussing the social and economic status of Muslims in India. So first I would like to say thank you so much for speaking with me today. I really appreciate it. And if you could first tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do for work and what you do here, and why you do it.
Okay, thank you so much for having me in the first place. I am an assistant director of the Research and Development Wing at Saida Trust, and this is a very social welfare-based organization that has a lot of institutions of relevance that cater to the socioeconomic marginalized populations. And I, as a public policy analyst, as a public policy researcher, these are areas of interest that I'm interested in. And policy is everywhere. Yes, it's ubiquitous, and therefore I chose this aspect of policy making because this influences the larger question of overall upliftment of people and communities. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And did you have any family that left for Pakistan after the partition? And if so, why did they leave? And do you think they would have been better off here than in Pakistan, or vice versa?
That's a very interesting question because no, I don't have family who's actually in Pakistan right now. However, my maternal grandmother wanted to leave for Pakistan, but then at the last minute she wasn't able to do that. And I'm really grateful for that because I know had she left there, and perhaps if I was born there, the kind of life I would have led would be very different to what it is right now. I like being in India primarily because of the kind of ethos this place holds, which is a very secular, a very universal kind of ethos that speaks about things that put us all on the pedestal as human beings. Mm-hmm. And that's something that India offers, right? So yeah. I'm really grateful. And again, the kind of intellectual sphere of the Indians and the kind of work that is being done, the Indian constitution, I'm very happy to be in India. Yeah.
Okay. And I want to ask you about the anti-Muslim feelings in India. So during your lifetime, have you seen any changes in the way Muslims have been treated? And do you think Muslims have become more separated from Indians?
Exactly. I mean, I can actually take a little bit of a cue from my last answer. Mm-hmm. The Indian constitution always spoke of secular ethos. I'm 26, by the way. I'm aged that. And up until recently, actually, up until I got into this particular profession, started working, right? Mm-hmm. I never saw that kind of difference. I have lived in a Brahmin predominant Hindu community in India, in Bangalore, the place that I come from. And we used to, if not celebrate, we used to be a part of these festivals in goodwill, right? However, right now there has been a separation of sorts where even being a part of these kinds of endeavors is frowned upon. And this has become a very cultural community thing, and I think that's very politically driven. But that was not the case. It's a very new phenomenon. I travel extensively all around India, right? But questions which didn't even matter, irrelevant questions, have been taken to the forefront and they've made mountains out of molehills for, like, even questions like as simple as the halal issue, right? I remember I was in Patna, that's in Bihar, for some work, and a person almost charged at me aggressively because I asked them if the meat that they're selling is halal.
Wow.
So that used to not be the case, but now it's very politically motivated, but it's a new phenomenon. I can just say that.
Okay. And so I've heard many people say that most Indians don't have bad feelings towards Muslims, and they say that only a few politicians trying to win elections say things. Do you believe that's true, and what is your comments on that?
So the answer to that is a little more complex. That yes, politicians leverage that kind of rhetoric to be able to sway the community that they are part of, because at the end of the day, the community acceptance actually translates into tangible votes, right? So they want to sway the community. However, what's happening with the advent of social media, etc., is that not only is this a one-time thing, people are getting that kind of mass load of misinformation, false kind of narratives that are influencing them. So it's just not subjected to the community per se that the politicians are targeting, but it's becoming a mass phenomenon, which is actually very scary. And that is now translating to, again, people having those kinds of acrimonious feelings locally. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's a wide question. It's a complex question. Cannot be just a politician versus mass rhetoric question. Yeah.
And have you personally felt that negative feelings towards Muslims in India has impacted the way you like personally feel living in India, the way you consider this place to be your home, or do you feel like you are unsafe here? Like, what's that?
To be very honest, right? So I love this country. I genuinely love this country. I want to work in this country. I want to work for this country. However, staying in India and looking at what's happening is definitely scary. I mean, it's. I mean, the analogy is a bit too far stretched, but looking at what's happening in Palestine, right, and seeing that the international community is not coming to the rescue of people. If that were to happen in India, where the narrative is going, I'm afraid that we don't have the kind of resources to be able to help us. So it's definitely a scary feeling, and especially if the politics side is so predominant over there, and if the institutions such as the judiciary are being influenced by the legislature, at that point of time, I'm afraid that who is going to come to the rescue of people? So it's a scary feeling.
Okay. And I've heard that many Muslims in India find it hard to succeed. Do you feel that you've lost opportunities because you're Muslim? And if so, why do you think that happens?
I personally don't think that I have lost any opportunity, talking from personal experience.
Yeah. Or if it may have been harder to get opportunities, or...
I mean, to be very honest, again, I haven't personally faced that. I'm very grateful to have come from a privileged background that gave me that secular kind of education. And interestingly, from my name or my demeanor, I don't think people can pinpoint that I come from a certain community. Perhaps that helps.
Yeah.
And that shows the psychology that people, or the perspective people hold generally. But I know of people who have lost a lot of opportunities because they're Muslim. I have heard of friends who have lost opportunities because they're dressed a certain way. I mean, it comes with its territory, you know. Being a Muslim is definitely a shaky place to come from today.
Yeah. And in India, Muslims are less educated than non-Muslims. Do you think that affects their economic status, and why do you think they are less educated than non-Muslims?
Okay, it's a very interesting question. That's very interesting. Yes, the minorities in India, especially the Muslims, are a very socioeconomic, politically marginalized community, right? And as I was talking previously, there's this vicious cycle of poverty that they fall into, and just because they're poor, they cannot avail education, they cannot avail healthcare services, they cannot say they fall sick, they do blue skill collar jobs, and again that does not lead to any kind of ascension in terms of their career space. So again, they fall in, and it's a very generational trauma that they have. So it's very difficult to get out of this kind of space, because of which they sadly fall into that bracket of society that cannot prosper relatively faster than, like, it's slow, the pace is slow compared to what the non-Muslims face. And another thing is that personally, I believe it's a culture issue. I don't want to come across as that Muslims are looked down upon and that's the reason that they face this situation as well. I personally believe that the onus lies on the community too, and the kind of culture that informs the Muslim community's behavior is also very lackadaisical. It's very saddening, but to me personally as a Muslim, wherein they don't let their women study. They don't let their women have those kinds of rights. And it's about how the patriarchy is still so entrenched within the Muslim community that somewhere they are the cause of their own misdoing or mishappening. So I think it's the stakeholders are. It's not that the Muslims are the victims and then there's this community that's on the high pedestal. I think Muslims are as much stakeholders of their present conditions as are the other communities. But it's just that now the tangential kind of shift is that Muslims are not going to be given. Even at one point, Muslims had the kind of space to get better, but right now that's going to be diminished because of the political standards. So Muslims, that's my answer.
And so you were talking about the cultural norms of Islam and like what the things that come with that.
Yeah.
So do you think that the Hinduism and their community share the same cultural norms as like women should not be working and kind of looking down upon that, or do you think that it's only Islam that kind of is holding those cultural norms?
So, the way I'd like to answer this question, and this is coming from a generic view, I'm not going to give a very detailed anthropological answer to that, is see, it all comes with one very particular thing, it's education.
Yeah.
So, if you see someone from the Hindu community, and if the woman at the end of the day is given some kind of access to education, right, and she's a part of that kind of educated sphere, what happens is that she's a part of a larger community wherein the next time she goes to spaces, she's better informed.
Yeah.
However, so that's where that part comes. I mean, not to say that the women in the Hindu community are not marginalized, but there are. But then the access they have is much more easier, much more stronger. And once a woman is educated, I believe that it shifts the perspective in a lot of ways. It's just that our Muslim women getting the same kind of access.
Yeah.
It's about accessibility, right?
Uh-huh.
So our Muslim, if a Hindu woman is getting accessibility for whatever reasons, is the same woman of the same nature or her same counterpart who's Muslim getting access to the same kind of facilities.
Yeah. And in India, Muslims, sorry, I already asked that question. What can India do personally, do you think, to make life better for Muslims?
I think that they need to adhere very rigorously to the tenets enshrined by the Constitution of India. I think the Indian Constitution is one of the most beautiful constitutions. If one is to read the Indian Constitution, it tells about how a person needs to be at a very it's a very humanitarian, it's a very social constitution, right? It has space for the religious, for the non-religious, for the poor, for the rich. It's a very holistic kind of a culture. I mean, if just the simple thing of going back to what our Indian Constitution has to say, and if our institutions are designed in the way that the Indian Constitution told us to, I think we'll be very well off. So it's just that.
And if you could change anything in India right now, what would you change?
I'd change access of a child's. My focus would be children.
Okay.
I'd want to focus on children, especially their formative years, and because if they are taught well at the very beginning that this is what is expected of you as citizens of this country, and if they're taught to love another person at a very early age, because hatred is learned, right? But they're taught that not only do they know that they have to love another person at a young age, but if they're taught continuously that you need to be kind, you need to be accepting, I think children are that group or that demography that I'd like to focus on. Yeah,
that's a great answer. Okay, thank you. That was it.
Thank you so much.